Hi, this is Erin Tierney. I'd like to thank you for the time that you've dedicated to volunteering to work with kids, children and youth at the Church of the Messiah. The next few minutes, I have a presentation here for you that will provide necessary information for you to continue to be a volunteer at Messiah. And I want to, before we really begin, I want to ask you to bear with us as our current Safe Sanctuaries policy is right in the middle of being modified into a better format and further developed and clarified so that we can be more familiar with it as a church. So we're in the transition phase right now. I ask your patience. Also, before we get going, please remember that if you do have any questions, I'd ask that you direct those questions to the staff person at Messiah who oversees the area you volunteer. If you work with children 5th grade or younger, you could ask me any questions. If you work with the youth, you can ask Zima Whitley middle school youth questions, and Josh Freshour, you may ask our older youth questions. So here we are. We're going to be talking about safe sanctuaries. You may or may not be familiar with a 1996 decision made by delegates to the United Methodist Church General Conference. The delegates passed a resolution requiring all conferences across our connection to adopt policies that safeguard children. So here we are in the West Ohio Conference of our United Methodist Church, and our conference indeed recommends that every church adopt and implement a safe sanctuary policy and create a safe sanctuary culture. This is where we are today. We do have a policy. We've had a policy at our church for some time. What we're striving for is a culture in our church that is focused on safe sanctuaries and really operates out of a safety mentality. When we discuss abuse of children, it certainly isn't something we enjoy discussing. It's not an easy topic to bring up. We're going to try to make this a quick presentation, and we'll try to make it something that we can all benefit from and grow from. Before we get to our policy, though, I wanted to share a little poetry with you. Maybe this will keep it a little bit light. I wrote an acrostic ode to Safe Sanctuaries training, and it goes like this. S is for safe, which we all deserve to be. A is for annual, how often we train, you see. F is for fun, well, on that we may miss the mark. And E is for everyone, no more backgrounds in the dark. So there's the safe part, and here is sanctuary, all spelled out top to bottom. So you say we can be safer, and just how you'd like to know. Never be alone with a child, cause your every move to show. Tell us where your home is, and also who refers you. Understand that a paper trail is just what we must do. Anticipate, concentrate, pay attention, use your noggin. Ratios will matter when it's time to have a lock-in. If a door is ever shut, get it open nice and wide, and even if you love sardines, the game that is, it's better not to hide. Say lots of prayers, ask for help, and we'll be safe as safe can be, and in the end, we'll sleep at night and avoid those legal fees. Thank you for indulging me with poetic streak. And here we go. Without further ado, the Church of the Messiah's 2005 policy in support of the safe sanctuaries. We recognize that the church has to do all that is in its power to assure the safety and spiritual growth of children and youth who come to our church. Here we have just a notation about definitions from the Ohio Revised Code. A child is anyone under the age of 18. Unless there are certain scenarios in which the juvenile courts will deem an individual a child until he or she is 21. That is our legal code under which we're operating. Another thing is when we talk about definitions, our new policy is spelling those out. If you look at the draft, you'll see that we do have definitions for abuse. Those include physical abuse, which is non-accidental hurting of a child. We also have sexual abuse. Of course, anyone who participates in sexual abuse or allows it would be guilty of abusing a child. Emotional abuse is harm on the psychological or social levels of a child. We'll go more into definitions as we go along. So that's our goal, is to prevent that kind of harm and abuse. We will work to ensure that children and youth have no harm done to them. And here are the steps on the next several slides. First, we will have at least 2 adults, preferably not related adults, present in a room where children's classes events are occurring. Again, children does refer to anyone under 18. And when this is not possible, a roamer will visit that space periodically. This means in Sunday school, when we're on retreats, we try to have a freed adult who is not designated with a group who can roam around if adults are one-on-one. Preferably, we're 2 adults to a group. This brings up questions of how to supervise when we're in cars. That's something that individual youth areas will address in their own policies or with their own guidelines. Another thing this brings up is if children are getting picked up from a place, we make sure there are 2 adults there when that one child is left waiting for a ride. In addition, we assure that volunteers are at least 5 years older than the children or youth that they work with. Next, we assure that no worker under the age of 18 is responsible in the Sunday school or nursery setting during worship. This is our current policy. We go on to say that child care in the nursery can be provided by a between 14 and 18-year-old if we have the following criteria met. The parents are notified and they give their permission. The children cared for are older than 2 years old, and the teenager has taken courses in first aid and CPR. I'll have to note that this policy is under revision, and as soon as our new policy is approved, this guideline will change. 18 and over must supervise children events. It doesn't mean that younger teens can't assist. It's just that we have to have an 18-year-old in charge of the nursery when there's no other adult in the room. Okay, going onward, we have that during teaching time, Sunday school room doors will be open or windows will be utilized. Counseling sessions will happen with doors open and others in the close vicinity. And another guideline to prevent harm coming to children is an orientation session, just like the one you are currently participating in. These sessions will include our policies to prevent abuse. We're right in the middle of a list of those. These sessions will also talk about procedures to be used in ministry with children and youth. These procedures will be developed within your individual areas. The nursery has some procedures that we utilize, children's ministry, Sunday school teachers, VBS volunteers. We all elucidate our own procedures for working in our specific age groups. The next thing we want to go over is steps to report an incident of abuse or a suspected incident of abuse. The main step right now is to direct any information that you may have to your staff person. That would be the person in charge of the age group. Then if there's any request for further information from anyone inside or outside of the church, all requests should be directed to the pastor. This is something we're expanding upon in our new policy in the draft. It goes through step-by-step directions of how to report, how to handle a person for whom there is an allegation, and also how to address issues to the pastor. But right now, those are the most important things to know. Finally, our orientation should include state laws regarding child abuse, and we've tried to weave those through. We do provide opportunities for first aid and CPR. That's our goal, is to provide those for workers with children and youth. It does happen that if you're listening to this before October 8th, we have a chance for one of our scouts and the scouting leaders to present a first aid class at Messiah October 8th in the afternoon, 1 to 3. We also try to provide opportunities when our day is doing trainings for our volunteers to join in on that. We've done that in the past. We also provide parents full notification about activities, and we also seek and strive to provide equipment and supervision. We try to leave no child unsupervised. That's one of our main objectives, and we also will maintain the insurance necessary for the scope of our ministries. That's a rundown of our policies to keep kids safe. Here are some additional guidelines that are stated as an addendum to our current policy. Number 1, volunteers must be related to the congregation for at least 6 months before they lead in ministry. This is before they have a leadership role. We screen our volunteers. Up to this point, this has included application forms with references. In many cases, our new policy mandates that for every volunteer we do have contact information on an application, and we also have 3 references with contact information. this is something that your individual age group staff people will help to fulfill this requirement. We also have asked that all volunteers and our paid staff agree to have a background check. Staff have been complying with that, but at this point we are phasing in volunteers having their background checks through a service that we've contracted with. And this is very much the sign of the times. It's very readily available for churches to have background checks run on their volunteers. This is standard procedure with many organizations. I'm sure you'll notice that Scouts do background checks, some schools do background checks. It's very much the common protocol in our current environment. Finally, Director of Children's Ministries and the Youth Ministries will oversee implementation and keep track of all our forms. And this statement says that with all the people on board, this should have been implemented by September 1st of 2005. Our policy should be reviewed annually at least, and we should make sure that we modify and further clarify the policy as needed. And last point, our congregation is committed to showing and sharing the love of God through Jesus to all who come to church, including children and youth. This policy was adopted by the congregation of Church of the Messiah United Methodist on March 1st, 2005. You should also, just a reiteration that our new policy will be in effect within the next calendar year, it's anticipated. So there will be further clarification that will be made as we continue to elucidate and better present our policies to the general congregation. In the foreseeable future, we will have a booklet that will circulate so that people can become more familiar, parents can be more familiar, and the general church population can be more familiar with our Safe Sanctuaries efforts. And in the future, we hope to hold open sessions so that we do indeed create a culture, as our West Ohio Conference suggests, a Safe Sanctuaries culture in which we're all quite familiar with the policies and procedures to keep kids safe when they're at church. And finally, I just want to thank you again for participating in this short presentation. Please do let us know if you have any questions, and please do follow up with your ministry area staff person so that your paperwork and any other kind of clarifications can be made in a timely manner. And make sure you do sign off that you participated in Safe Sanctuaries training for this year, 2011. Thank you very much.